Thomas Edward Lawrence, known as Lawrence of Arabia, was born on August 16, 1888, in Tremadog, Wales. He was the illegitimate son of Thomas Chapman and Sarah Junner, a family maid. His father adopted the surname Lawrence after abandoning his lawful wife and starting a new life with Sarah and their children. Lawrence grew up in an academic and cultured environment. He received his primary education at various schools in England. From a young age, he showed a keen interest in history and archaeology, which influenced his academic career. In 1907, he enrolled at Jesus College, Oxford, where he studied history. Lawrence distinguished himself during his studies with his intelligence and diligence, graduating with first-class honours in history in 1910. During his time at Oxford, Lawrence developed a particular interest in the Middle East and made several trips to the region. In 1909, he embarked on a cycling tour of Syria and Palestine to study Crusader castles, which sparked his fascination with the area's culture and history. After graduating, Lawrence worked on archaeological excavations at Carchemish, on the modern-day Syrian-Turkish border, under the supervision of British archaeologist Sir Leonard Woolley. This experience provided him with extensive knowledge of the Arabic language and Arab culture. While working there, he met Gertrude Bell, also from Oxford, who would become one of Britain's most esteemed archaeologists and political officers. Lawrence worked with Bell on various occasions throughout his life. Whereas Lawrence's work mostly pertained to the Arabian Peninsula, Bell would be a major influence in Iraq. Lawrence's first contact with the British military took place in January of 1914 when he was approached to map the Egyptian desert under the guise of archaeological work. He completed the mission successfully and would officially enter service later that year following the outbreak of the First World War. In October 1914, Lawrence enlisted in the British Army. He was assigned to intelligence and summoned to Egypt. Back in London, Secretary of State for War Herbert Kitchener was made aware by his subordinate Mark Sykes that the Ottoman Empire was to side with Germany in the war. Sykes advised Kitchener to approach Hussein, the Sharif of Mecca, for military support against the Ottoman Empire. Correspondence between the British government and Hussein resulted in an agreement according to which Great Britain would provide the Arabs an independent state if they were to side with them against the Turks. By 1915, weakening the Ottomans had become an urgent matter because the Allies were facing stiff resistance in the Gallipoli campaign. To secure more intel and facilitate an Arab revolt against the Ottomans, Sykes decided to establish a new unit based in Cairo, to be known as the Arab Bureau. Lawrence was among the members selected for the organization. For the Arab Bureau, Mark Sykes selected people with extensive on-the-ground experience in the Middle East. The list of prospective members was short. For example, at the time, only 2 Brits had traveled across the Arabian Peninsula, Gertrude Bell and the poet and writer Charles Doughty. Others to join the new organization included a journalist who had worked in Constantinople prior to the outbreak of the war and military officials who served in Cairo, Lawrence being among them. On January 7, 1916, the Arab Bureau was formalized as an organization, and soon thereafter, it started operating out of the Savoy Hotel in Cairo. The organization's tasks included creating propaganda, harmonizing British political activity, and gathering intelligence on the Ottoman military. Importantly, the Arab Bureau was responsible for providing support for the Arab Revolt, which began in June 1916. British logistical, military, and financial assistance for the Arabs went through the Arab Bureau. While working for the Arab Bureau, Lawrence supervised the preparation of maps, produced reports for British generals operating in the Middle East, and interviewed prisoners. Lawrence had escaped frontline work during his first 2 years of service. However, in the fall of 1916, he was sent to Arabia, where he would soon see action against the Turks. After agreeing to support the British against the Ottomans in exchange for a future Arab state, the Sharif of Mecca and his supporters started military operations in the summer of 1916. It was only a select group of Arabs under Hussein who agreed to revolt. In their first months of fighting, they made limited progress. When Lawrence arrived in the Arabian Peninsula in the fall of 1916, most large cities there were still under Ottoman control. The Arab rebels did, however, control Mecca and swathes of the Arabian hinterland from which they staged guerrilla attacks. Lawrence began working with Faisal, one of Hussein's sons and a commander in the rebel army. Together they devised plans to attack critical Ottoman infrastructure, including the railway which ran from Damascus to Medina. Starting in January 1917, Lawrence rode with Arab forces, fighting alongside them to capture Ottoman outposts and destroy railways and bridges. The Arab Revolt was carried out using hit-and-run operations, which were carefully strategized by Lawrence and Faisal. These efforts succeeded in tying Turkish forces down and frustrating Ottoman logistics. Between raids and campaigns, Lawrence reported to the British headquarters in Cairo and organized British support for the Arab war effort. In the context of the Arab Revolt, the capture of Aqaba in July 1917 was a pivotal and crucial event. Aqaba, a coastal city on the Gulf of Aqaba, was under Ottoman control and held significant strategic importance. Securing Aqaba would open the way for Arab and British forces to advance into the Ottoman heartland and enhance their logistical capabilities. T.E. Lawrence collaborated with Prince Faisal bin Hussein to plan a strategic attack on Aqaba. Lawrence realized that attacking Aqaba from the sea would be difficult due to the strong Ottoman fortifications and the naval presence guarding the port. Instead, he proposed a bold plan to attack Aqaba from the desert. The Arab forces, led by Lawrence and local leader Auda Abu Tayyi of the Hawatat tribe, embarked on a grueling journey through the Nafud Desert, a harsh and arid region. They traveled approximately 600 miles, enduring the extreme desert conditions and scarcity of water. The journey was fraught with dangers, as Ottoman forces monitored movements in the area. However, Lawrence and Abu Tayyi made strategic maneuvers to avoid direct confrontations with the Ottomans. During this journey, Lawrence and his forces launched a series of attacks on Ottoman supply lines, distracting the Ottomans and weakening their defensive capabilities. When the Arab forces reached the outskirts of Aqaba, they had managed to maintain the element of surprise. On July 6, 1917, the Arab forces launched a surprise attack on the Ottoman garrison in Aqaba from the landward side, where the Ottomans were least prepared for an assault. The Ottoman garrison was weak and unprepared, leading to a swift collapse of the defenses. As a result of the surprise attack, the Arab forces were able to capture Aqaba with minimal losses. The capture of Aqaba was a significant strategic victory for the Arab Revolt, opening the way for Arab and British forces to advance into the Ottoman heartland and enhance their logistical capabilities. This victory also boosted the morale of the Arab forces and encouraged more Arab tribes to join the revolt. The capture of Aqaba had a substantial impact on the course of events in the region, helping to strengthen the cooperation between Arab and British forces and dealing significant blows to the Ottoman forces. The victory at Aqaba is one of Lawrence of Arabia's most notable achievements and reflects his strategic military planning and leadership skills under challenging conditions. Following the capture of Aqaba, Arab and British forces continued to secure victories against the Ottomans, contributing to the overall success of the Arab Revolt. By the end of 1917, the British, under General Edmund Allenby, launched a significant offensive in Palestine. Lawrence and the Arab forces played a supporting role by attacking the Hejaz Railway, a vital supply line for the Ottoman forces. These guerrilla-style raids disrupted Ottoman communications and logistics, making it more difficult for them to effectively resist the British advance. The British capture of Jerusalem in December 1917 marked a turning point in the campaign. While Lawrence was not directly involved in the battle for Jerusalem, his efforts in coordinating the Arab Revolt and disrupting Ottoman supply lines contributed to the overall weakening of Ottoman defenses in the region. Lawrence's strategic insights and his ability to mobilize and inspire the Arab forces were instrumental in the broader context of the campaign. In 1918, Lawrence continued to work closely with the Arab forces, pushing further north. His activities included intelligence gathering, planning raids, and maintaining the delicate alliance between the British and the Arabs. As the British advanced through Palestine and into Syria, Lawrence's role remained crucial in ensuring that the Arab forces were effectively integrated into the campaign. The capture of Damascus in October 1918 was a significant milestone in the campaign. Lawrence entered the city alongside the Arab forces, symbolizing the culmination of their efforts to liberate Arab lands from Ottoman rule. This moment also highlighted the complex dynamics between the British and the Arabs, as the post-war settlement began to take shape. Despite the military successes, the political outcomes were more ambiguous. The Sykes-Picot Agreement and the Balfour Declaration, both of which affected the future of Palestine, created significant tensions and contradictions. Lawrence, who had developed a deep commitment to the Arab cause, found himself increasingly disillusioned by the imperial interests that overshadowed the promises of independence made to the Arabs. While Lawrence was leading these military operations, European powers were secretly redrawing the map of the Middle East. In the spring of 1916 in London, the British and French had reached a secret agreement. Even in the midst of fighting a war, the two powers found it pertinent to discuss how to divide their spoils should they be victorious. Mark Sykes led the British delegation, with his French counterpart being François-Georges Picot. The two parties agreed upon an arrangement that came to be known as the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Under this agreement, France would control regions including Syria, Lebanon, and parts of southeastern Turkey, while Britain would control Iraq, Jordan, and parts of Saudi Arabia, with Palestine placed under international administration due to its religious significance. The Sykes-Picot Agreement was a troublesome arrangement for multiple reasons. First, the arbitral partitioning of Ottoman territory into different parts without taking into account ethnic, religious, or historical considerations would become a cause of many conflicts in the Middle East. In addition, there was, of course, the matter of the British having promised Greater Syria to the Arabs in return for their assistance during the war. Initially, Lawrence was unaware of this agreement. He was working to support the Arab Revolt based on promises made by Britain to the Arabs that they would be granted independence after the war. Over time, Lawrence realized the deceit embedded in these promises, as Britain had secretly agreed with France to partition the Arab lands without considering the Arabs' aspirations for independence. This contradiction placed Lawrence in a difficult and morally complex position, as he had built strong relationships with Arab leaders, particularly Prince Faisal, based on trust and cooperation. Despite his awareness of the deception, Lawrence continued to support the Arab Revolt, driven by the hope that military successes by the Arabs would strengthen their position in post-war negotiations. He believed that capturing strategic locations like Aqaba and Damascus would give the Arabs greater leverage and make it harder for European powers to ignore their demands for independence. However, the harsh reality was that the Sykes-Picot Agreement had already predetermined the fate of the region without the knowledge of the Arab leaders. After the fall of Aqaba, Lawrence continued to support Arab forces in their campaign against the Ottomans, achieving significant victories, including the capture of Damascus in October 1918. Following the end of the war, Lawrence participated in the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, where he and Prince Faisal attempted to present the Arab case for independence to the international community. Despite their efforts, the core provisions of the Sykes-Picot Agreement were implemented, and the territories were divided according to the agreement, leading to the establishment of British and French mandates over the region. Soon after the war, Lawrence became a well-known figure. The man responsible for making him famous was the American writer and filmmaker Lowell Thomas. Together with a cameraman, Thomas had set out for the Middle East in 1918 to film the war. He hoped the material he shot there would increase American support for the war effort. While in Jerusalem, Thomas met Lawrence and was captivated by his Arab dress and mannerisms. He filmed Lawrence and took photographs, which he used for a show he produced on the war. The show, titled With Allenby in Palestine, was a great success in America and Britain. Thomas identified Lawrence as the main cause for the show's success, and the two men met again, this time in London, to shoot new material. In 1920, Thomas relaunched his show with Lawrence as a central figure and changed the title to With Allenby in Palestine and Lawrence in Arabia. Lawrence did not enjoy his newfound celebrity status for long and later expressed regrets about seeking the limelight. Starting in February 1920, Lawrence began working as an advisor on Arab affairs to colonial minister Winston Churchill. In this capacity, he traveled to the Middle East multiple times. After a year of employment, however, Lawrence quit because he despised the bureaucratic side of the job and had grown too disillusioned with the British government and its Middle East policy. Lawrence signed up for the British Royal Air Force in August 1922. During his service, he worked on his autobiography entitled 7 Pillars of Wisdom, which was published in 1926 and became a bestseller. Lawrence spent his remaining years of service in relative obscurity. He was stationed in British India for some time and served at a RAF base near Plymouth. When his enlistment ended in 1935, Lawrence retreated to his cottage in the English countryside. In May 1935, Lawrence was speeding on his motorcycle when he encountered two boys on bicycles. Lawrence lost control when he tried to evade them and crashed, sustaining serious injuries. Doctors were unable to save Lawrence, resulting in his death on May 19, 1935. As a war hero who was greatly celebrated, his passing was widely mourned in Britain. In conclusion, the legacy of Thomas Edward Lawrence, known as Lawrence of Arabia, remains etched in history as a figure of significant and often contradictory impact. Lawrence was a symbol of heroism and adventure, leaving his mark on the Arab Revolt and helping shape the modern Middle East. Through his writings and memoirs, such as 7 Pillars of Wisdom, Lawrence conveyed his experiences and thoughts with a literary finesse that continues to be read and studied today. The end of his life was quiet compared to his eventful years, but he left behind a rich legacy in literature, thought, and politics, and an indelible mark on the history of the Middle East and the world. Lawrence's story stands as a testament to human strength, willpower, and the struggle for freedom, offering an important lesson in the political and human complexities that shape the destinies of nations. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content.